Okay, good evening. Right, so for tonight's Halacha Shiur, we've got a very interesting topic connected to the Parsha. Parsha's Chukas. The Pasuk says, "Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda midbatzin b'chodesh harishon vayeshev ha'am b'kodesh v'tomos sham Miriam." And Miriam dies. V'tzikov sham. So this is a good opportunity to talk about organ donation, because most organ donation happens post-death. But what we're going to talk about tonight is live organ donation. Post-death organ donation is much more complicated. And perhaps that's for Shiur for another time. Heart, lung, brain, whatever. That's in Halacha, that's much more complicated. What we're going to focus on this evening is live organ donation, primarily kidneys, where the donor is still alive and you're taking it from them and giving it to some recipient. And that is a very interesting area of Halacha. There are lots of tshuvas about it recently. Of course, the tshuvas only happen, in fairly recent times because this is a fairly new phenomenon. And it's always important to look at the dates of the tshuvas, because I think that has a bearing on things. So the first tshuva, if you look at your handout, if you're listening online, j.golker@gmail.com, I'll send you the handout. The Minchas Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Weiss, he writes this on Yom Hey, Daled Iyar Tovshin Chof Aleph, here in Manchester. This is before he went to Eretz Yisrael. And that's 1961. Okay, so then medically, that's quite a while ago. That's 60 plus years ago. Says the Minchas Yitzchak, "V'al dova shedibarnu b'nogea lehimotzos harofim b'meshemarkivim kol yomei odom bari." You transplant a kidney, kulyo is a kidney, from a healthy person, ba'odom echod shekulyoso niskalkalo, to a recipient whose kidneys have failed. Im muter la'odom bari lahaniach little kulya achas mishalei. Is a healthy person allowed to have a kidney taken from him b'shvil refuas chaveroi, to benefit his friend? For dibarnu meha, and we've spoken about this. The reis chaver tover b'yam. If you're going for a walk and you see your friend drowning in the sea, im tzorich lehikones atzmei lesofek sakana b'shvil hatzalas chaver. Are you allowed, or is it necessary to put yourself in a dangerous situation to help your friend? That's really the issue. Says the Minchas Yitzchak, fascinating. Hine, roisi besma, I've seen in the Sma in Choshen Mishpat, shehevi b'shem hagod Maimonides, shekosov b'shem HaYerushalmi, to mechuyev lehachnis atzmei b'sofek sakana, that the Sma writes, b'shem hagod Maimonides, quoting the Yerushalmi, that a person is obligated to put himself into some form of danger, aval harif v'harambam v'harosh v'atur v'shulchan aruch hishmitu, but no one brings this lahalacha. The Rif, the Rambam, the Rosh, those are the three, by the way. In the introduction to the Shulchan Aruch, he says that the Shulchan Aruch is writing a code of Jewish law. So how does he know which Rishon to go like? So you've got dozens and dozens of Rishonim. So he says in the Hakdama, I'm going to base my psak on the consensus of two of the three great Rishonim. So the three Amudei HaRishonim are the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh, and I'll go with the majority. Now, therefore, by the way, you have an inbuilt Sephardi majority, because the Rambam and the Rif are Sephardim, and the Rosh is not. So therefore, the Ramah comes along and redresses the balance and puts, Tosfos, Rashi, other Rishonim of Ashkenaz. But either way, he says it's not in those three, in the two and the Shulchan Aruch. V'hapischei tshuva shom hevi b'shem sefer agodas ezov tamashmat, and he gives the reason. Mishum da'ashas tilon palik, because our Shas, the Talmud Bavli, argues with the Talmud Yerushalmi. V'ayim behetiv v'pischei tshuvas, etc. Be'im Oma Hasar Yisrael, if a non-Jewish governor says to a Jew, Hanach liktzos eve echod, ve'im loy amis es Yisrael chavercha, you've got to allow us, we're going to chop off one of your hands in order that we're going to save your friend. And if you don't allow us, we're going to kill you for another Jewish person. That horrible conundrum. So says the Minchas Yitzchak, the pligu b'zeh, and therefore our Shas says you don't have to do it. It's allowed to do it as a midas chasidus if you want to, but you don't have to. The famous tshuva of the Radvaz, but tshuva is chilek. He says, well, it depends how much danger is involved by you having a hand amputated. If there's no danger to you, then it's a midas chasidus. But if there's danger to you, then you are a chosid shoita, a pious fool. Right? That's what the Radvaz says. Now, uva nidon didon, bevadai ikasakona. Says Reb Vosna, in our situation to give a kidney, there is definitely danger and having the operation. V'gam lahaba, and not just now, the danger of having operation, also in future, al hasoras kulya shaloi, having only one kidney, that could be problematic. The machlek is only if you need to or not. But it's mutzah, that seems to be it's mutzah if you want to. It only applies if you know for certain you're going to save your friend. But if it's unknown, then maybe not. I'm just writing this to raise the issues, etc., etc. So the Minchas Yitzchok is very hesitant to allow kidney transplants, and he will only allow if the donor will definitely save the life of the recipient. And also the Tzitz Eliezer, who's the guy in Waldenberg, he is also hesitant, and he's not so so forthcoming in allowing it. And he only allows it if the expert doctors are sure that there is no danger to the donor, etc., etc. However, other poskim take a much more sort of willing, lenient view, and they permit kidney donations, and they feel that the risk nowadays is very minimal. And perhaps the most cited tshuva is Rabbi Yosef in the Chavadas in Chelik Gimel Siman Pei Dalet. He says, "Ulam be'emes shenim selonu epiroifim." We know, we've spoken to doctors, mumchim, expert doctors, v'rei shamayim, who are God-fearing Jews. Shedargas hasikun beitzos hakulya la'odam hatorim. The danger, the degree of danger for the person who is giving, himu'etes ma'oid. It's very, very small. 99% me'atarmim chayzim lebriusim hiskina. In other words, 99% go back to their original health, and they don't have any adverse effects. So the fizer, harikol masha hiskima poiskim anal she'osa lachim sas mesofek sakona. And when he quotes other poskim who say you can't because you can't put yourself in a case of sofek sakona, zehurak besofek hashikul masha engem minidindon. That's only if there's a real danger. But in our situation, shebevada shemitzvi litroim kedei lahatznes chaver mimaves batuach, then it's certainly allowed.
Is there an element of only being able to do it for another Jew?
That's a good question.
Because I once was almost at the level of giving bone marrow. It was going to be in the 9 days, and I called Diana and told he's nothing to do with the 9 days. He's only happy if you know that you're giving it to.
You're giving it to another Jew.
You don't know who you're giving it to.
Yeah, with bone marrow, you don't know the recipient.
I don't think with any donations, certainly not the time. Perhaps time elapses and they allow you to know.
So with blood, that's also the case. You give blood, you've got no idea where it's going to end up. So he made that chiluk.
Blood there's no risk. There's a risk.
Yeah, we're going to come to that in a second.
Which is why I asked.
Yeah.
For the 9 days, should I do it? But
he said it's not the issue of danger; it's the issue of the recipient.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I hear that. So it comes out there's a machlokus in the poskim, but the contemporary poskim, Rav Moshe as well, takes a more lenient line, like Rav Adya, and therefore they permit kidney donation so long as the risk is minimal, which it seems to be in the vast majority of cases nowadays. There is a fascinating case, Rav Ravitz. Rav Ravitz was the famous member of the Knesset, and he had 12 children, and he's no longer alive. This is going back a while, and he needed a kidney transplant, and all 12 children fought for the right to give their kidney to their father, and it went to a din Torah. And Rabbi Yashav presided over this din Torah, and each one had a different argument. I'm the eldest, and therefore I'm the Bechor, and it comes to me, and I'm the youngest, and therefore statistically I'm most healthy. Each one had that, and Rabbi Yashav boiled it down to 2, and he had to do a goyrel, he had to do a lottery. I think he did the Gaon's goyrel, the Goyrel Hagra, with the Vilna Gaon's famous goyrel, and to work out which son would do it. But it's just, and it made the headlines at the time, you can imagine, fighting over a situation. It goes to a din Torah, we want the right, the zuchus, to give a kidney to our father. And one of the kids did it. Professor Rav Steinberg, one of the famous medical ethical people in the world today, he, in his writings, he sets out 4 requirements. And let's just go through what they are, just regarding halacha l'maisa of giving kidneys today. Number 1, the surgery to remove the organ must not be dangerous. Okay, so we've seen that in Rav Adya, and Rav Moshe says the same. The donor must be able to continue his life normally after the donation. No ill effects. The donor must not require prolonged medical care. I guess that's linked to the second one. And the success rate for the recipient must be high. It can't just be that it's very speculative or something. It's got to be, it's got to be some sort of success rate is very likely. Now, all of that is kidney donations. The other live donations that you mentioned earlier is, of course, blood and bone marrow. And that's easier. because certainly blood and even bone marrow is easier to justify in halacha, because for two reasons. Number one, blood and bone marrow is renewable, as opposed to kidneys, which when you're taking it, that's it. But blood is certainly very renewable, and bone marrow as well, it just takes a little bit longer. And again, the element of danger is much safer, and it presents very minimal risk to the donor. Interestingly, what would happen if the potential donor doesn't wish to donate his bone marrow, and they know for sure it's a match? Now, can you force the person to do it? So that is debated. So poskim differs to whether he can be compelled to donate. That's one interesting area. Another thing Shlomo Zalman says, he said it's a mitzvah certain to donate bone marrow donor. I've got the sources cited there. But other live donations which present a high risk, for example, I've given liver lobes, lung lobes, they're more difficult to justify because that's much more of an intrusive type of operation and the risks are therefore higher. So to summarize, when it comes to live organ donation in halacha, although you do come across psakim of quite old ones, going back to the 1960s, where some poskim are more hesitant to allow it because of the dangers involved. The contemporary poskim I think the mainstream view nowadays is that it's certainly allowed because the risks are minimal, but subject to these requirements. That there needs to be, it can't be dangerous, the person's got to be able to continue a healthy lifestyle, the success rate for the recipient must be high, etc., etc. And giving blood and bone marrow, again, is fine. The Igros Moshe says, in the box on the top of the second page, he says, Yesh tam gadol shelo lesa. I'll tell you, I'll give you a good reason why it's not asa. They would let blood left, right, and center. In the olden days, it was quite a common, and certainly in the times of the Gemara, it's a very common phenomenon. And even if it's just to sort of, to make you feel a little easier, lighter, then it would be okay. And therefore, there must be some sort of health benefit to it. It hasn't been such a big change in the human makeup that in those days it was considered very healthy, that it must be some benefit nowadays, says Ramesha. You can extract the blood with minimal pain. Therefore, there's no reason to prohibit letting blood nowadays. And therefore, you won't be making you to give blood, then it would be absolutely fine to give that. It says Yedideh Moshe Feinstein. Okay, so that's because the parsha begins with Thomas Shal Miriam, Vatikov Sham. Miriam dies, and a lot of discussion about organ donation is about harvesting organs after the person has passed away. And therefore, organ donations after the person has passed away, to harvest organs for that. So therefore, organ donations is connected to death. It's a bit tenuous, but it's a good topic to talk about. Okay.